all I dreamed about, being a champion.
I'm the best ever.
I got into boxing because I wanted to be the very best.
He is not going to get up.
My goal was to be the baddest guy that I can be.
It's the most dangerous sport there is.
Fighter don't care who his opponent is. He my weight, bring him.
People are literally fighting for their lives.
Boxing is one of those sports where the toughest mothers in the world are letting some guys that couldn't make it take advantage of them.
Boxing is laissez-faire capitalism run amok.
Don King told him, every time that you knock somebody out in the first round, I give you $100,000 in cash.
And he's down again.
The sport itself, there's a purity to it, but the business might be the most unsanitized of all businesses.
It's a sport where you can be used. How do you handle that?
There's always this possibility of tremendous loss.
One punch and it's all over with.
Holyfield might have Tyson.
It's the American dream and it's the American nightmare.
They all want this boxer to make them money. Once the boxer doesn't, they're cast aside like rubbish.
The role models I seen was the people in the street.
You're looking at your environment and no one's helping you.
Boxing's an escape from violence and poverty, but you're escaping through violence itself.
Why is it every sport have some type of union and boxing don't?
Anybody on this planet, you could beat them in a fair fight. Tell me how that'll feed your ego.
All I want to do is not die.
It's over.
It's the ones that know how to lose, make yourself better, and come back. That's boxing.
How's everyone doing today? It's nice and warm finally, right? No snow, got a little sunshine. Great day to talk boxing. Right when the Pacquiao-Mayweather press conference is going on. I guess I shouldn't say that, but anyway. There's been a resurgence in boxing lately, and I think the film comes out at a great time for the sport. Boxing's back on prime time, first time in 30 years. Also on HBO, Showtime, tremendous film coming out, Champs. I've had the privilege of being able to view it and preview it, and it's an outstanding film, and I urge every one of you to watch it when it comes out. Bert, I want to ask you, what was the inspiration behind the film, and why did you decide to pursue it?
I mean, I always found, the inherent irony behind the fact that there's such amazing people behind this sport who essentially leave some of the toughest, most violent situations in their lives to partake in the most violent, most difficult, dangerous sport that there is. It was that inherent irony was always fascinating to me, and really getting behind the men and women who actually choose to do that. I mean, it's truly the ultimate paradox, and it's something that for me was really compelling. And being a huge sports fan myself, and a huge fan of Mike and Evander and Bernard during that time, because kind of when I was growing up, it was something I really wanted to do.
As you mentioned, you focus on basically three fighters in this film: Mike Tyson, Bernard Hopkins, and Evander Holyfield. Why those three fighters?
I grew up in 80s and 90s, and those, these were the biggest, most iconic athletes of that time, not just in boxing and not just in sports, but I mean, you're talking about iconic figures in the world. And so at that time, to see kind of the fall of grace that the sport has taken, it was something to me that, especially with younger kids not really knowing as much about the boxers and the people that make up the sport. And it's had such a crucial role in the history of our country. So I wanted to kind of get behind it again and see, how did this fall from grace happen? And the people that are in the sport, how can we improve it so that, the people not just viewing the sport get a better experience, but most importantly, the men and women that partake have the proper resources and tools to live a successful, productive life and be champions outside of the ring as well as inside.
Evander, you're the baby of 9 kids.
I'm the youngest. Not
youngest.
Not the baby, the youngest.
The youngest of 9 kids. And you originally wanted to be a football player and play for the Atlanta Falcons. What lured you away from football into boxing?
Well,
what lured me away from football is the fact is that my mother would never allow us to complain. She said, if you complain, you'll end up becoming a loser. And so, of course, I was good in football, but when I got to high school, did nobody know who I was. So because I was small, they didn't give me an opportunity. So my mother said I couldn't quit. Like that, and said, you start that season, you got to play the whole season. Finally, they let me go in the last game, they seen how good a player I was. And they asked me, was I going to come back? I said, no. And he said, why? I said, because I'm just going to box. Because my mother told me, said, life is about finding something that you love. Don't make no excuses. My mother said, people who make excuses become losers. So, if you don't want nobody to take you out the game, then you need to box. Now, if the coaches determine who the best player are. That was the coach do. So, but in boxing, the fighter get the opportunity to dig deep if he choose to. So I wanted to bet on myself, so that's when I ended up in boxing.
And if you can, tell the story about Cecil Collins. You actually lost your first fight and wanted to quit, and your mother wasn't going to have that.
Well, you don't choose your parents. You don't choose your parents. You don't choose your skin color either. I probably wouldn't chose black back in them days. But in our neighborhood, everybody was black, and so this is the late '60s, and they were saying white people were devils, and my mama looked me in my eyes and said, "Son, don't you believe that? See now, if you prejudiced, you're gonna limit your opportunity to being successful. Now, don't be prejudiced. Now, you let them keep saying that. That's the reason they poor. You don't want to end up poor." And I thought we was poor already. But my mama said, but my mama told me, she said, "Son, you're not poor. I'm poor. Now, I'm trying to keep you from being poor." Like this. And she said, don't believe that. So, of course, and my mama telling me that, I end up going to the boys club. And this white man named Carter Morgan told me I could be like Muhammad Ali. And so in the point that he telling me I could be like Muhammad Ali, and he asked me what did I think, I told him I had to ask my mama. And he looked at me and said, "What?" I said, "I got to ask my mama." Then he looked at me and said, "You know what? You got a good mama." And of course, as a kid, I didn't know what that really means. You don't even know my mama. But, he said, people who have good parents got a good support group. So when he told me go ask my mama told me, yes, you listen, follow direction, don't quit. And of course, when he said don't quit, that means don't quit. Now, when everything was going good, because in our neighborhood, they said white boys can fight. And, I didn't know if they could or not. But I know the first fight I fought one of them, I hit the kid, and he said, "Oh, God," and he quit. The second fight I fought a white kid, I hit him again, and he said, "Oh, God," and he quit. And the third kid I fought, he started crying and quit. And all of a sudden, I ran into Cecil Collins. And my coach asked me, was I afraid of him? So my coach is white, and he asked me, was I afraid Cecil Collins, which was white? And I was trying to figure out, why would I be afraid of him? I felt that when I hit him, he gonna say, "Oh God," and quit. Of course, when the fight came, I hit him, he hit me back. And so when I come to the corner, my coach said, "What's wrong?" I said, "He hit me back." He said, "Welcome to boxing." So Cecil Collins, the first person I ever lost against, and he was a white. And one thing that I learned in that situation that, being white don't mean that you can't fight. I learned that at an early age. And so I had to fight him again because my mama wouldn't let me quit. And he beat me again. So on the third time, I was going to make sure that I wasn't going to fight Cecil Collins, because I realized that now, it may be some white boys can't fight, but he can. And I'm not going to fight him. So I moved into the Junior Olympic program, and so I was 13 years old. The winner go to Tennessee. See, I live in Atlanta. I've never been outside Atlanta. So if I win, we good to go to Tennessee. So what I did is I came to the weigh-in, and I was looking for Cecil Collins because I know Cecil Collins could beat me. My friends that I had with me, they was black, and they didn't think white boys can fight. I wasn't going to open my mouth and tell them they could, some of them at least, because I ain't want them to know that I got beat. So I didn't say nothing, because all my friends said, oh, we going to win this tournament with no problem. I didn't say nothing, because I was looking for Cecil Collins. Now, I'm opening my mouth if I don't see Cecil Collins. Plus, but I brought a 5-pound weight with me to make sure that Cecil Collins there. If he weigh 100 pounds, I'm going to weigh 105. I'm not fighting Cecil Collins. Of course, I didn't see Cecil Collins, so what happened is the fact that the matter is that I didn't think Cecil Collins was there. So I got in my weight division, 100 pounds. Cecil Collins showed up. I win 3 fights, and all of a sudden I got to fight Cecil Collins in the final. And all of a sudden, when I looked and I see his name right there, and my friends who lost told me I was going to lose too, and he said, you fighting Cecil Collins. I seen that name and I started crying. The only reason why I fought him because my mama gonna beat my behind if I don't fight him. Now I can try to beat Cecil Collins, but I can't whoop mama. So this is what happened. So you know what? And it changed my whole life from this point on. I prayed, because only person can stop me from getting a whooping is my mama. See, I get 3 whoopings a day. And so if I said, please, Jesus, help me, my mama would stop. So I wanted to win the fight so bad, so I started praying, please, Jesus, help me. And all my friends laughed at me all the way up to the thing I got in the ring. And when the bell rung, me and Cecil Collins, it was a minute and a half, 3 rounds. When they said the winner, they said Evander Holyfield. All I know that, wow, Jesus worked. And ever since then, this is what I do. I pray before I go in there.
And Bert, one thing that sort of is a thread throughout the film is this notion of boxing being the American dream, or being a way of achieving the American dream. Is that still hold true today, and why is that so strong in the film?
I mean, I think for a lot of these guys, boxing was the only way out of the situations they were in. I mean, I think boxing throughout the course of history in this country has shown that. The lowest economic, segments of the world have always been attracted to boxing. And that's why I think the boxing in general, whether you're a fan of the sport or not, and the reason why we made this film, and I think a lot of films are made, is, there's such human stories behind these athletes, more so than probably anybody. They're probably the most relatable guys on so many different levels. I don't care if you're men, women, athletes, non-athletes. There's just so many. There's so many obstacles these guys have had to overcome, and for me personally, it was something that I also, similar to as an audience member, I feel like I've been truly inspired by, as I got to know a lot of these guys, and also just knowing that, you could overcome the most daunting of circumstances in life. And especially by like learning from people who have been there through, you know, worse situations or different situations. It was something that was inspiring to me, and I think the sport in general, you know, is preyed in history on kind of those people. And I think that's why I think this is an important story to also tell, is that, you know, boxing's not going anywhere. It's been here for so long. Yes, it's on the decline as far as, you know, overall popularity, you could say, but the money's still there. You see it with Manny and Floyd, and, you know, $500 million on the table for 2 fights. It's the money's there. The people want to see it. The thing now is, how can people learn from, you know, Evander and Mike and Bernard and a slew of other fighters who have fought the wars and been through things, and surround themselves with the right people, and hopefully get, you know, boxing back on track, being federally regulated to a level where it can actually be beneficial for people, and surround people with, you know, the right resources.
Evander, talk about that dynamic. You were making $8,000 a year, and then you go to the Olympics and you got robbed of the gold medal, but you come out basically a hero by the way you handled it, not complaining. For those of you maybe not know, he went to the '84 Olympics, was a favorite, got to the semifinals, basically knocked the guy out, but was disqualified because the referee called stop. At least that's what the referee said. He said. And because the guy got knocked out and couldn't fight, Evander got disqualified for hitting after the bell. He got bronze medal. Bronze medal. But yet he didn't complain, he didn't argue, he didn't say I got robbed and cheated. And the way he I guess, absorbed that in a dignified fashion made him basically the hero of that Olympics. You signed a big contract, you go from $8,000 to being a millionaire overnight, and then all the riches that came after that. How do you handle that when you're not really educated, don't have the people around you that are educated with money? What kind of dynamic is that?
Well, it's a hard situation from anybody. You learn from your mistakes. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, like I said, you know, I was the youngest at 9. I'm the first one in my family to get a car, you know, and I'm the youngest at 9. And so, you know, we had a couple of people who went to college and like that, but it's amazing the information, who shared the information. And so when you look at my situation was based is my mama was my best friend. My mother was, and my mother would tell, he made it, because, you know, I'm the one that used to make $8,000 a year. I had 3 jobs. And I boxed. And someone begged the Olympic Training Center that allowed me to come up there, come up to Colorado just to see this facility. And because I was such a nice kid. And this lady named Miss Bo Davis for the Georgia Amateur Boxing Association asked the president of the whole boxing federation, who was from Georgia, to let me come up. And they paid me for me to go up there. And I fought against a Cuban, and I did so well that they said, oh, we got to have him back. I got that one opportunity. That one opportunity allowed me to become #1 in the United States. Then I go to the Pan American game, and I win a silver medal, and all of a sudden, I'm one of the top guys because my attitude. Then this guy named Ricky Womack, who I beat, but now all of a sudden he beat me in the Olympic trial. He come ranked #1 in the whole world because he knocked out the Cuban and he knocked out the Russian. And somehow he found favor with Howard Cosell. And when Howard Cosell said he was #1, he was #1. And for me to win, to make the Olympic team, I got to beat him back to back. I prayed and I beat him back to back. And all of a sudden, I made the Olympic team. I was the last person to make the Olympic team, and didn't nobody know who I was because didn't nobody think that I was going to make it. I came ranked #1 at the right time. I made the Olympic team, And I had 3 fights, I had 3 knockouts. On my 4th fight, I knocked the guy out, and the referee disqualified me. And Howard Cosell stood up for me, and he told the people, he was telling the people, and they protest, and everybody was able to see that I didn't do anything wrong, but Olympic Committee wasn't accustomed to changing their decision once they were made. And it was just as my mama told me from the time I was a kid. Like I said, I used to get 3 whippings a day. And my mother, and I was always telling my mother, they hit me first. But my mama told me I had to hit a person back if they hit me. So my mama said, and the fact that when I was in school, somebody hit me, and they always catch me trying to get back at somebody. And my mama said, revenge is the Lord. Like this, and I'm like, but you told me to hit them back. But then when I hit them back, then they call my mama, then I get a whooping. So what happened is these things like this would happen all the time, and my grandmother was telling me, say, you know what? You got to hold your head up and realize that you have to accept responsibility when bad things happen, because you got to know you're a part of it. So you know what? In that fight there, they disqualified me, but I actually thought, because we was in America, maybe I would have acted different maybe if I was somewhere else. But because we was in America, and because my mama was watching TV, because I know if my mama watching TV, my mama gonna get me. So, I held my tongue just like this, and like this, they raised that kid hand and stuff like this, and I was mad. I worked real hard because I wanted to be a gold medal winner. But I thought because we was in the United States, they were gonna change it anyway. And they didn't. And all of a sudden, Howard Cosell started talking about my attitude. But my mama used to always tell me, your attitude will carry you a lot farther than your talent. But as a kid, I wanted the talent. And I wasn't saying about the attitude, but the attitude is the reason why I got that $1 million contract. So ABC signed a contract with me in 1984. We had 9 gold medals, 1 silver, 1 bronze. I was a bronze medal, and I got the ABC contract, and that's the reason why I'm as popular as I am today, because people don't realize that my manager said you can never count out the exposure that you get if you're on TV. And so here I am today.
Bert, one thing I was impressed by, you have an array of people in the movie, not just boxers, but you've got actors and teachers and professors, all talking about boxing and the dynamics of boxing and the social impacts of boxing. Were you surprised by the various people being so passionate about the sport, or is the sport something that everybody can sort of be passionate about?
I was surprised and I wasn't. I think making a film like this, you want people who are passionate. You want people who have personal experience. And like I mentioned earlier, we didn't make the film just for boxing fans and for people who are just sports fans. There's a real human side behind these guys, and I think that's why a lot of the actors and professors and other contributors really got behind the film and were able to really partake and give of themselves, because there's nothing that these guys have been through that we can't relate to. That's the truth. And the difference is they're literally like fighting, like I think how Mary J. Blige says, she really related a lot, for instance, to this film, to the fighters herself. And I'd known her for a little bit, and I didn't realize how much these guys had meant to her and influenced her life and had changed her outlook growing up from the things she had been through. And she'd probably be the furthest person I would think would be, other than maybe viewing a boxing match, be really passionate about it and about these guys. And I mean, it's universal, and I feel like, I think that's why there have been critically acclaimed boxing films over the years that have been nominated for Oscars, and because it's less about the sport than it is, the individuals that make it up and the people who are preyed upon who make up the sport. And this film is really about, hopefully, a call to action as well. We didn't want to make it that type of a film. It's not, it's not a preachy type film. It's not a film that's, throwing rhetoric in your face. We want people to kind of come up with their own conclusions and reflect on their life, hopefully differently by seeing it. But really, hopefully, make this a really important statement that, changes need to be made. And hopefully, guys like Mike and Bernard and Evander sitting right here have really dedicated their lives post-career of making their lives really important and count and impactful way beyond the ring. That's why it's called Champs, because it's about, really being a champion in life. And as cliche as that may sound, it's how do you find, your purpose after you've dedicated your whole life to something? How do you find your purpose to now leave your mark and hopefully, make a positive impact on people who you come across? And these guys have all worked with a lot of young amateur boxers, and they're not doing it for the money. And same thing with a film like this. They really want to be part of a social awareness and a change in the sport, and the people that get into the sport and have to get into the sport as their only way out, to have the proper tools and resources and everything from accountants and lawyers and the proper management and doctors to make sure that their best interests are looked out for and they're able to be productive members of society post-career.
And we're talking about some major voices that are in the film: Denzel Washington, Mary J., as you said, Mark Wahlberg, 50 Cent. So there's a lot of cross reference of people that are voicing their opinions about boxing. Evander, what do you think boxing needs to do to sort of improve itself for the fighters and even for the fans as well? What sort of improvements can be made in the sport?
Well, I think for us, the fighters, they could have attorneys. Because fighters are very loyal. They're very loyal. You know what I'm saying? If you have a friend, I had friends that I grew up with, hung around me. Now, I didn't do nothing. I didn't do drugs, but they did. And they just do it and right beside me. My mama had already told me, son, stay away from them people. Now, when they put them in jail, they're going to put you in jail too. Because you're going to say, I didn't do nothing. My mama said, but that's the favorite word that people say. They ain't did nothing. So my mother, at a young age, my mother worked me away from situations. But, for the fighters, we trust. You trust me. Like me, I trust a lawyer. Well, I didn't know lawyers just like athletes. They, they specialize in things. But you need an attorney to negotiate. You got an attorney that may be a real estate attorney. But but somehow don't nobody tell, an athlete that, you got to get the one that specializes in different things that you do. I'm saying, so a lot of these things happen to fighters because we don't know. You come from a situation that you don't know. You trust your friends, and your friends, they the one that kind of sell you out sometimes, but family members do too. I'm sure you got people who sell you out. So this is what fighters need, people. I became better. I had a fighter. I had a trainer. It's my trainer trained. That's what he do. He trained. But if I need a doctor, I get a doctor. So you start finding out that you got to change up. One person ain't gonna be able to help you in everything. So you learn this through the situation. A lot of people run out of money before they find it out. But still being able to make adjustment, at least be able to. I'm honored today to stand here because I had a mother who told me, he said, son, this ain't got to happen to you. It ain't got to happen to you, it happened to me. And so the things that happened to my mother happened to my mother. I didn't make none of the mistakes that my mama told me about. That's the greatest thing I had. I had a mama who loved me, for me, and allowed me this. The things that happened to me, hopefully they ain't got to happen to my kids because I understand. The information, it's just information shared. But one thing I would say that these guys as fighters, you'll find that lazy people is not going to make it. Lazy people, because the fact is that means that even if they know they're not going to do it. But when you're not lazy and you will work hard, then this is the reason why people got into the game of boxing. Because boxing is all about heart. You know, I fought a lot of guys with better fighters, but did they have more heart than me? Now, that's up to you. My mama said you can never it's up to you to let somebody outwork you. And so whenever you have seen me fight, you know, at the last end, I realized this. If you can't outwork me, you're not going to beat me. And so the fact of the matter, guys that I lost against, they outworked me at some point in time in their life. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, I put it all on the line, and that's what fighters do.
You need lawyers to watch the lawyers.
And I think, too, that the fact that the sport has no real federal regulation, it's pretty minimal. You know, it's the fact that it's like the Wild West. It's not, you know, your promoters and managers and just kind of preying on, you know, young, impressionable people, but there's no organization put in place. There's no, you know, if you look at all the other major sports, there's some programs put in place. There's minimum, you know, wages in there. There's, you know, they have the proper programs where people are going to be given the resources to thrive. And boxing doesn't do that. And for me, that seems like it's a microcosm of a much bigger issue going on in the country, because look who boxing preys upon, and the people that are throughout the last 100 years who have entered the sport, you know, reached iconic levels, and people who never reached iconic levels. And there's nobody looking out for their best interest. I mean, the average fighter makes roughly $30,000, just to give you an idea, and that's before they pay everybody out. Every other sport, major sport, and the money's there. The money's there. There's huge numbers, even with a sport that's fallen from grace like it has.
Pacquiao Mayweather will generate upwards of $300 million. Pretty good.
Per fight, and there'll probably be multiple.
I think we have some questions from the audience. Any questions in the audience?
Evander, pleasure. Bert, quick question for you guys. When I grew up, you know, probably same era, you had Hagler, Hearns, and then you had Holyfield, you had Tyson. What do you think happened to the sport where, like, these guys were all household names? Even if you didn't follow boxing, you knew everybody. And now I think I know 2 boxers. Is it because of, you know, mainstream went towards NFL or something?
I mean, Evander can attest to this probably even better than I can, but I will say, at that time, even when Evander, when you were saying 1984, he's talking about Howard Cosell. You're talking about ABC Worldwide of Sports. You had, you know, Leonard and Hearns and these guys on terrestrial television. So they were household names, because you'd be watching your favorite show and you'd see a commercial and these guys would be on. I mean, it had a different kind of backing then, but I think what happened is a lot of people learned from the mistakes of boxing and the fact that it is so disorganized and it doesn't have the proper, you know, organization in place. And so, yeah, organizations like the NFL, even mixed martial arts, you know, they've learned from a lot of in UFC, they've learned from a lot of the mistakes boxing's made. And, you know, boxing went to pay-per-view. So now it's like, for boxing fans, it became like a very niche sport. It didn't become mainstream like it was in the past and have the impact it had on everyone around the world.
You're right. You used to see some of the best fights on afternoon television on ABC, Wide World of Sports, something like that, and only very, very few fights on closed circuit and all of that. Now it got to be all of the fights were on HBO and Showtime and pay-per-view, and the fights started at 10, 11 p.m., so you wiped out a lot of that audience, and I think boxing is trying to get that back by going to prime time. First time in 30 years it was on prime time last Saturday night, NBC. It's going to be on Spike TV on Friday night. Then HBO will have its programming on Saturday, and then it'll go back to prime time on NBC. So boxing is undergoing a resurgence now, but we'll see where it goes from there. Any other questions from the audience? Couple up front.
We have time for one more.
Hi. I just wondered how NBC did with what the audience was like last week.
It peaked at 4.2 million viewers. To give you some comparison, a great audience on HBO is, the record, in fact, is 2 million pay-per-view buys. So what the pay-per-view buyers will tell you, or the people who produce the pay-per-view will say, for every one buyer who purchased the broadcast, there'll be 4 people viewing. So the numbers are basically roughly the same, But what they applauded themselves for was carrying the demographic from 18 to 39. And so they got a large audience for that. And it's a start. Once more people become aware of the fights and start becoming more familiar with the fighters, it should grow and that audience base should expand.
And I think bringing in a new generation and like I mentioned earlier, bringing in an audience, like we said for our film, it's not just geared towards boxing fans and sports fans, but I think that's what boxing has to do. It has to, and the way to do that is look out for the fighters and the people that make it up. There's a lot of people who know about the sport and have a very negative impression of the sport, and rightfully so, because the sport unfortunately has taken advantage of a lot of these guys and left them without, the wherewithal to move on with their lives properly. So I think, people would have a completely different outlook if they knew, okay, people are looking out for their best interest. I don't have this guilty feeling of watching these guys enter the ring in this barbaric sport where they're risking their lives, and who knows if they're, even equipped to be in there mentally or physically. Boxers are 90% of boxers that enter the ring professionally, sustain some sort of significant brain injury, and there's no follow-up other than an initial MRI to get your boxing license, ever. So, that speaks volumes, and I think once these kinds of things and, what we're trying to push here just comes to like a much larger conversation, I feel you can get the sport on track, and most importantly, protect the people who have made this such an amazing sport and impact on so many people.
Evander, tell us what you're involved with currently and some of the things that you're doing.
Well, we have started a Team Holyfield, and in Team Holyfield, we doing something for Madison Square Garden. We do something for American Cancer Society, and with me, it is all about giving back, because I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for the Boys and Girls Club, because the Boys and Girls Club gave me an opportunity. At 8 years old, if I never ran into Carter Morgan, I never would have been that guy that at 8 years old kind of felt that I could be like Muhammad Ali. But he told me that I could be like Muhammad Ali, and with other than my mama, he the only person that ever said I could be something worth being. And me asking my mama, and she said I could, it allowed me to believe. And so that's how important, for me to give back, and for me to give back is just so important, and for me to tell people that the faith that I have in Jesus is just so important, because if I didn't have that faith, many times I would have quit. And because I didn't quit, I became full-time heavyweight champion of the world.
Again, Bert, congratulations on the film. Check it out. It's fantastic. Evander, good luck on all your endeavors. Great to see you again. And watch the fights.